Hey everybody, I am back celebrating 4th of July by reviewing the iconic war film Saving Private Ryan. Before we continue, please follow me in the links in the description below. If you enjoy my content, please smash that like button, show your support. Uh, yeah, the first time I remember watching this film, and please let me know when the first time you watched this film, because this movie has been seared into my brain when I first watched this in high school for film studies class, and around the same time as I saw like the first Clerks film, and this movie is really good, and of course it's directed by Steven Spielberg because of course that's why it's so freaking good. Written by Robert Rodat, and talking about like a star-studded cast, most of which at that time I didn't know who they were, or I've seen them in a couple of things, or I knew them very well at that point. And a lot of them grew into like incredible A-list actors over time. Uh, so of course we got Tom Hanks as John H. Miller, uh, U.S. Uh, a U.S. captain of the Second Ranger Battalion. Edward Burns as Richard Rubin, uh, Tom Sizemore as Mike Horvath, Jeremy Davis as Timothy Upham, Vin Diesel. Of course, we didn't know Vin Diesel as Vin Diesel yet at that time, as Adrian Caparzio, Adam Goldberg as Stanley Fish Millish, Barry Pepper as Daniel Jackson, Giovanni Ribisi as Irwin Wade, Matt Damon as James Francis Ryan. We get a little bits here for Dennis Farina as Walter Anderson, Ted Danson as Fred Hemmel, the captain of 101st Airborne Division. Uh, Paul Giamatti as William Hill. Bryan Cranston as Mac, staff officer of the War Department. So, crazy casting. Of course, over time, we all recognize these people from many stuff since then. But at that time, like, we didn't know how big of a deal they will turn out to be. This movie had like a budget in between 65 million to 70 million and raked in at the box office of the time during July 24th, 1998, of $482.3 million. Now, fairly recently, many, for the Memorial Day, many people like Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg and many other war veterans and the president, all celebrating and honoring the troops for Memorial Day for many sacrifices, like the one in WW2. And incredible plot twist, in case you did not seen this film, because it definitely caught me by surprise the first time I watched this film, because it opens with old man visiting a grave with his family, and we get this kind of transition shot between this old man to like a young man, which we see Tom Hanks with his men storming Omaha Beach in 1944. And low-key, I can't help but think about Captain America during this period. It's like, God, Captain America is somewhere being created somewhere. But no, this is Marvel. I know. I'm just saying, it's like you can't help but think that as a Marvel fan. It's like, man, Captain America is somewhere around here, or just about to fall into the waters and being frozen in time during this period. Anyway, the first 10 minutes of this film is probably the most incredible cinematography and well directed and well written scenes in movie history. And I didn't even notice this has like a, not in this part, but later on in the third act, or at least there's a few points in this film where it's like incredible tracking shots that I didn't even notice. Kudos to Daredevil that really put one shot scenes really on the map, because we see them in other stuff prior to that, but we didn't really appreciate it or prop it up as we should have. But Daredevil series really elevated the one shot scene to where we all pick up on it now. And you can't help but notice it. And like when I see it, like, oh my god, it's a really cool tracking shot. So I appreciate that. So well shot scenes. But the first 10 minutes of this as they're storming the beach is so appreciated Steven Spielberg and all the writers that no, this is one of the most gory part of the war, storming Omaha Beach, where people are throwing up in the boats. There's nervousness. These people knew most of them will die, and it's harrowing, honestly. Where as soon as they get on that beach, in the little boat things like lowering the doors, they're getting chopped up, and they knew they probably had to crawl over one another to try to, get a foothold here, because it's one of the most important moments in the war where you gotta get the foothold. It's like one of those important parts of the war that really turned the tide for the Allied forces. It's one of the most critical points that we know of in history. But also one of the most, the death count was immense. So you see from Tom Hanks' perspective, Miller, but where he's, like a bomb went off and he's deafened a little bit. So he's seeing like all like bodies of his, fellow soldiers is just dropping. One of the most crucial ones that still tattoo in my brain today, since I've seen it, because I've seen this movie at least quite a few times over the years. The first time was in high school, and seeing this dude literally searching around while hella bullets flying all over the place by the Germans, who pretty much got the high ground essentially, and he's crawling around finding his torn off arm. It's like insane. I couldn't even imagine. None of us could even imagine the harrowing moments of this section of the war. But they managed to get to a point where they found like a way to worm through. They took down a bunch of Germans, so the rest of the forces could, make their way on to this territory. Then back home, where ladies are, typing up letters for family members of fallen soldiers, and is one of the most from what I've heard from like soldiers from who react to this film, is one of the most horrible things for like families have to read. Again, that particular letter from soldiers, driving to their houses, especially moms or wives who get that dreaded letter that their next of kin or their husband or whatever had fallen in battle. It is a tough thing to get. But they noticed that which you can't help but think about. Now I'm thinking about it, uh, where there's four brothers, three of whom have fallen in battle, who share the same familiar background with the last name Ryan, and they realize, okay, I think the youngest brother is the one who is still alive, but it's like, okay, we can't. I can't imagine, because like they send in like a official letter uh, to overseas to let troops know, or at least looking for a particular. Miller gets the call, so he gets the orders to try to find the last surviving family member to send him home, because they can't have the last bloodline completely eradicated. They can't do that. So they gotta send this guy home. This guy needs to get home. And I'm thinking about, like, okay, this cool, but how many other family members who have, like, fellow brothers who on the front lines, like, get that kind of special treatment? I imagine it has to be like a lot, who have like a lot of family members who are joining the war. That's like, okay, like there's like two brothers who's joining the war. One died, the other has to be sent home. They can't, because like, how there's no sister, back home or anything like that. It's not the case. But I'm just saying, like, to continue on the bloodline or what have you. But I don't know. There's something I can't help but think about. It's like, okay, there's got to be more than just this Ryan family to get this kind of special treatment. There's got to be a lot of. They got to get this kind of same treatment to many other troops who are all joining this war, especially if they're siblings, or like a father and a son who has to join, and the father died and they had to send this boy home, kind of thing, to continue on the bloodline kind of situation. So Miller gets orders, and he gathers fellow troops underneath his command, plus Upham, who's this translator, because they lost his trying to storm the beach. So they gather this guy Upham, who never seen battle combat outside of training. So they make their way to try to find this Ryan guy from the last known whereabouts. And along the way, they start losing a couple of people, like Carpaccio, Vin Diesel character, who come across this Jewish family who is getting caught between like some German battalion across this little section of a small town area, this like short town area, and I know Carpaccio is a harder goal kind of situation, but it's like because his family is trying to get the daughter, because they have like a baby and a couple of other kids, and one of the fathers who, despite the Upham trying to translate that, we can't, because Miller can't take their kids off their hands. But it's just like, I know it's a harrowing time. Things like emotions are, and fear are at like its peak right now. But it's like, dude, like, you can't pawn your kids off to us. We can't take them. And despite us saying like, no, you can't. But Carpaccio's goofy butt is like, he reminds me of my niece, sir. It's like, so the F what? Like, yeah, I get it. You're compassionate. You don't want this family, especially these kids, to die in this crossfire. But, you got this like sniper, and Carpaccio gets one in the chest. And he has a letter for his father to, like, for them to get to his father and everything like that back home. He ends up dying, but they managed to take out the sniper. So this already set off a chain of events for these group of men who are like brothers themselves, and they uh, losing one already like set off a chain of events that this Ryan guy better be worth it, because like he gets to go home. Like, look, we all got mothers back home. We all got like family and stuff like that. But this guy shouldn't be any special than us, kind of thing. So they get kind of, uh, to work up a grudge essentially. Uh, but Miller, they try to get Miller to like, come on, like speak your mind, Captain. Like, I know you think this is kind of bogus too, and I like this dialogue with Miller. It's like, I don't, because it represents what hierarchy is and chain of command is, where he understands their feelings. He points out like, I don't get to bitch to you. You guys can bitch to me, and I can bitch to my boss and their boss and their boss. But the bitching don't go work their way from top to down. It doesn't work that way. So, like, I have a duty I have to follow. Despite any grievances of what my boss's orders to me are, I still follow it to the letter. I can complain, well, necessarily complain, but you can speak your mind when the need arises. But it doesn't go from, top to down. It goes from down to up. But we still got to respect the orders. So they make their way to, what was the next town they get to? Well, they make their way to another Allied controlled area where they meet what they think is James Ryan, but it's a different Ryan, because it's James Francis Ryan they're looking for. This is James Frederick Ryan, completely different Ryan. So they become kind of like very more disgruntled. They go over these fallen dog tags, trying to see if like maybe he's fallen in battle after his team was airdropped, because they went off course because the pilot got scared and started turning around and things of that nature. So they end up dropping in like a wrong area, and they lost quite a few men, and there was like a pile of dog tags, and they were so a couple of Miller's team was callously sifting through the dog tags as the other troops members of this division was walking by, and they was looking by in sorrowful in the face. And the medic guy, the team medic, crap, this one's Iron Wade had to like put it back in a bag, and it's like, dudes, have some freaking respect. These guys are looking on you sitting there playing around on these dog tags. And I'm shocked that it took this particular medic to point that out to his friends, where none of these guys walking by stood up and said anything. They just looking at them gobsmacked, like, now y'all gonna say anything? Like, hey, those are my buddies y'all going through, or something like that. They don't. They just look on like, or it's like none of y'all, like hundreds of y'all, are just like looking on gobsmacked, meat mugging and stuff like that. But you don't say nothing. But they catch on. It's like, wow, okay, we were out of line on that one. So Miller decides like, okay, screw this. He just decides to just yell out. Anybody knows Ryan? Anybody knows James Francis Ryan? And as needle in a haystack kind of situation, but he gets extremely lucky that, I mean, it's not luck, it's just by the odds that somebody, James Francis Ryan managed to make some group of friends along this little, in this war. Somebody in the division managed to like, hey, like, yeah, I know there's a couple of guys who knows James Francis Ryan. Like, he goes get two dudes. One of them who was with Ryan earlier, who is slightly deaf, tells Miller like, yeah, I know James Francis Ryan. He had orders to go help some other division going into this particular town. So they's like, oh, okay, so they know their next lead is. So along the way, they come across this little section where another German battalion was kind of camping out. It's like not like a roadblock, but it's like they held like a checkpoint essentially, where they can't get past, because the quickest way is a straight line, but unfortunately there's like a little section there these group of Germans are holding point at. They don't want to go around them because they'll sacrifice a day or two, and like, no, we can't do that. And besides, as one of them point out, if there is another allied group of people coming by, they will get clipped by these dudes. So we got to take them down now, so there won't be an issue for a later group of forces. So the managed to take these guys down, but the medic Wade gets shot in the gut, and despite their attempt to save him, he knows, despite him bleeding to death, he knows they can't save him. Like, even he probably wouldn't be able to save himself. So he tells them to like just give me morphine, knowing full well like I just want to ease my pain because I'm going to die and I don't want to die in pain. So he ends up dying, and one surviving German soldier, they, a few of them beat up, even despite Uphill's protests, where it's like, this, you gotta follow the rules of war, guys. He's unarmed, he's not a threat anymore, but they ain't trying to hear none of that. So they force him to dig a grave by himself, so that way they can bury their friends. But after he's done so, Uphill, says like, we gotta let him go. Like, if you find like our troops, surrender to them so you can be put in holding, blah blah blah. Of course, it doesn't do that. He manages to make his way to find one of his allies. But the Brooklyn native, Rybin, is getting completely, disillusioned by their mission. It's like, this has gone too far. We lost too many people at this point just to find this Ryan guy, and who knows where he is, or even if he's like even alive at this point. And these orders are bullcrap. But he wants to desert and go back to the main forces so he can continue on fighting this war, because that's supposed to be the main point of this, not to find some dude. So Horvath holds him at gunpoint, and it's like, your captain gives you orders and you're going to follow it. And despite Upham's, like telling Miller, like, you got to stop this. He's going to, it's getting crazy. And then there was this whole thing about them trying to place a bet on what the captain's life was before the war. And he just ups and shouts, what was the bet? The tip of the bet was 300, right? Everybody just stops in their tracks. Like he just relents and says like, I was a school teacher and I was an English teacher and a baseball coach, and I don't know who this Ryan is, and I don't particularly care, but this guy, he needs to go home, and I don't even know if when I get home, if I get home, if my wife is even going to recognize me because am completely different from where I was before the war. And his hand is shaking because ever since the war started, because it's just nervousness or anxiousness or whatever, just psychological trauma that all of them are experiencing in real time at this point. And it's just like, I know for one thing is that, we need to find this guy. So he and the others starts burying their friends, and they make their way to the town where, and they finally find Ryan and tells him about the fate of his brothers, but he doesn't want to go home. Like, you can go and tell my mom that I still have brothers here that I need to fight for, and I shouldn't go home any more than they should. So he refused to go home and abandon his brothers, and he says like, my mom should be able to understand that. So there's this like bridge area that these German forces are about to make their way to, and they gotta stop them. So they don't have much ammo, and the only superior officer is Miller at this point. So they decide to hold point and make a stand, pretty much. They cannot let the German forces take hold of this location. So they hold point and they fend them off as much as they can until reinforcements show. There's like a fight between the only Jewish guy in the group, Milish, who is having like a knife fight between this German guy who was the one that Uphill let go, and Milish dies, and the German guy walked past a crying Upham who like is feeling awful because like this wouldn't have happened if he didn't let this guy go. But he gets his comeuppance where Upham at the end ended up shooting this guy dead because he's not going to let that slide anymore. Even though he just let a bunch of other German guys who surrendered go. And it's like, dude, you didn't really learn your lesson at all. But whatever. The reinforcements technically came, so they probably would have gotten captured anyway. Whatever. A lot of them end up, creating these kind of sticky bombs in order to disrupt a couple of the Germans' tanks. A lot of them end up dying, including I keep wanting to call him Horvath. Like Horvath? Yeah, Horvath. Yeah, I'm thinking it's like a video game character I think of as like Horvath or something. Anyway, Horvath goes down. Miller takes a stand. Despite being critically wounded, he just shoots his pistol at the oncoming tank. But reinforcements arrive, take the tank out, and he tells Ryan with his dying breath, like, live for us, make our sacrifices worth it. And that's where the transition shot goes from Ryan to the old man, because the old man turns out to be Ryan, who has his large family now. He's a grandfather, and he's at Miller's grave. And that's where the movie ends. It's one of the most like harrowing movies ever. And great action, great dialogue. The all the actors knew the assignment, and they brought their A game, despite no matter how the low the cameos are, or don't know if you can call them cameos, but just low support roles or the higher roles. Everybody brought their A game. The cinematography is still top notch. The the writing is incredible. The dialogue is incredible. You're hanging on every word, and like I said, the tracking shots in this is incredible. A plus movie. I think a lot of war veterans who react to this movie, from what I've seen on YouTube, always give this high praise because like Steven Spielberg, I'm pretty sure brought a lot of war vets on to consult, so that way they can get this like pretty freaking accurate in terms of how it was. In terms of like the tools that they used at the time and how Normandy Beach was, everything. But anyway, that was Saving Private Ryan. Not many issues I have with this outside of like Upham's like allowing those dudes to go, where he's like he should have learned his lesson from before. But beyond that, yeah, like it's not many. Like it's pretty much nitpicking at a certain point. But it's an incredible film. Highly recommend. And yeah, that was it. Next week I will be reviewing the fourth installment of the Die Hard films, Live Free and Die Hard, which I argue should have just the Die Hard franchise should have stopped at that point, because after that is got the crappy one. But I'll let you guys know my thoughts on that film next week. But yeah, to continue on with the Independence Day movie month review. Anyway, I will see you guys a little bit later as I wrap up today's review with season 2 of Batman the Animated Series and my thoughts on that. And yeah, take care. Happy 4th of July. Thank you all who are veterans who serve this country. You guys have, I have so much respect for you guys. You guys do a great, did a great service to this country, and I can't sing y'all praises enough. So I salute you guys. Take care, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.